John Ulzheimer is known as one of our nation's most recognized credit experts. Having worked for 28 years in the credit industry, John has become one of the most prolific speakers about credit and the go-to authority on answers to credit-related questions. Credit Countdown with John Ulzheimer.
Hello, my name is John Ulzheimer. I am a consumer credit scoring expert, and today I am going to talk to you. We're going to go a little bit inside baseball today. We're going to talk about the inner workings of credit scoring systems. We're going to talk about credit scoring buckets. Most of the time when I'm asked about credit scores, the questioning is something about how can I improve my score? However, from time to time, and it's very enjoyable for me because I like talking about other things other than what people can do to improve their scores, I get questions from time to time about how many points certain things are worth. How many points is an inquiry worth? How many points is a charge-off worth? How many points am I going to lose because of this collection account? Or some reasonable derivative of that question. So not only are these questions entirely reasonable, but they make a lot of sense. We grew up in an academic environment where questions on tests are worth a certain number of points, right? If you have a test that has 10 questions, each of those questions is worth 10 points for a possible grade of 100. It makes immense sense, and it's entirely reasonable for consumers to believe or have the assumption that the little things on your credit reports like inquiries and trade lines and collection accounts and public records are all worth some fixed number of points towards your final score. That's not how credit scores work. There is no fixed value to any particular item on a credit report. If you ever read a book that suggests that certain things are worth a certain number of points, return it and get your money back. If you ever read a blog or hear somebody speaking that credit report entries are worth a specific number of points, you could ignore it because that is factually inaccurate. That is not how credit scoring systems work. That's not how any credit scoring systems work. Nothing on your credit reports are worth any specific number of points, either positive or negative. Scoring systems do not assign points like that because they're not designed to assign points to specific items. So follow me because this gets a little bit complex. Credit scoring models assign points based on how well you perform in certain credit scoring categories. You earn points for how well you do across a variety of entries on your credit report. Let me give you a really good example. There are 3 components to credit scoring systems: characteristics, variables, and weight. Some people call them questions, answers, and points, okay? Let me walk you through an example of how that works. So a common characteristic or question that is asked by a credit scoring system of someone's credit report is, how many credit card accounts do you have with a balance greater than 0? So the credit report is going to have an answer to that question, and that answer is commonly referred to as a variable, a bucket, or a bin. They're all the same thing. It's essentially an answer to the question. So if the credit report is asked, how many credit card accounts do you have with a balance greater than 0? Let's just say that the answer from the credit report is 4. That the credit report now has 4 credit card accounts with a balance greater than 0. Fantastic. So now not only do we have the characteristic or question, but we also have the answer to the question, which is the variable or bucket. And that's what we're talking about today, is buckets. Once the credit scoring model gets the answer to the question and knows what bucket you fall into, then it can assign points or weight to that answer. So what has value is what bucket you fall in, not specifically any one item on a credit report. So let's just make up some value just so we can kind of continue with the example. If you have 4 credit card accounts with a balance greater than 0, and let's say that one of the buckets in a credit scoring systems is 3 to 6, and you fell into that bucket because you had 4, and let's say that bucket is worth 20 points, then you have earned 20 points because you have 4 accounts with a balance greater than 0. You would have also earned 20 points if you had 3, 5, or 6, because they all would have fallen within the same bucket. So that kind of dispels this myth that every one item has a different value because it's really based on what bucket you fall into, not the actual number of items on your report. So I just want to also be clear, because I know how the internet and social media works, that was a fictitious example. It's not meant to mimic how any specific credit scoring system works. It's not meant to mimic the point value you would have for the number of credit card accounts with balances. It's simply meant to illustrate to you how scoring systems in general work. So the variable, again, the variable or answer component to that example is what we refer to as a bucket or a bin. And it's essentially the range where the answer to the credit scoring question is going to fall. And then the weight or the points are assigned to the bucket where your answer has fallen. Look, I realize this is complex and it may take you a few times listening to this to kind of really understand how this works. But at the very least, what this exposes is the truth that no one item on a credit report is worth X number of points. It's the range or the bucket. So again, in the example that I just gave, between 3 to 6 was worth 20 points. 3, 4, 5, and 6 would have all earned you that 20 points. This is precisely why people who try to assign any specific value to any one credit report entry are universally incorrect, because that's not how scoring systems work. Another thing to keep in mind, this is going to blow your mind, is that you don't lose points in credit scoring systems. And so the weights that you see assigned to the buckets that you fall into are always positive. They're never negative, meaning that nothing is worth minus 20 points, minus 50 points, minus 100 points. That's not how they work. Credit scoring systems are aggregate, meaning that they add points together. You may not earn as many points because you have some of these negative entries, but you don't lose points because of those negative entries. Again, something that is completely counterintuitive, and you commonly hear people, and I'm guilty of it as well, because it's easier to talk about, hey, a charge-off may make your credit score go down, or a collection may make your credit score go down. And the reality is that the proper way to say it, which no one says it this way because it doesn't roll off the tongue in conversation, would be, well, my score just isn't higher because of the charge-off, or my score isn't higher because of the collection. That's actually the proper way to say it, because scoring systems assign positive points. They don't pull points away. What this means, and I think we all know that both FICO and VantageScore, the range or the scale of their credit scoring systems is now 300 to 850 and has been 300 to 850 for some time. Your credit score doesn't start out at 850 and then gets chipped away based on what's on your credit report. Instead, you start on the other end and then you accumulate points. So, if you ever read a book where people say that a collection is worth minus 50 or a charge-off was worth minus 100, it doesn't work that way. If you have any of those negative items, like collections or charge-offs or public record, you would fall into a bucket that would be worth fewer points than someone who did not have that type of entry on the credit report. So that should kind of give you an indication, kind of going back to the example we used a moment ago about the number of credit cards with a balance greater than 0. It's the same thing. If you have those things on your credit reports, those derogatory entries, you're just going to fall into a bucket that's worth a fewer amount of points. That's why your score isn't as high when people who have those types of entries. You can really apply this example to almost every scoreable attribute on your credit report. I'll give you another one. People love to talk about how inquiries are worth 4 points each, 5 points each. There's even stuff on the different credit scoring websites that from the companies that actually build credit scores that read, it may cost you about 5 points, blah, 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 and that kind of insinuate that there is this value of 5 points per inquiry. Incorrect. It's the same, it works the same way. So one of the characteristics or questions may be, how many inquiries do you have in the past 12 months? And the answer may be 0, where you're going to earn the maximum number of points for that particular category. Let's say it's 100 points, which it's not, but I'm just making the math easy. And then let's say another example, how many inquiries do you have in the past 12 months? Let's say the answer is 7. And instead of earning the 100 points that you could have earned, let's say you only earned 20 points. And so you left 80 points on the table. It insinuates that your score went down because of the inquiries, when in reality you just didn't book or bank as many points because of the inquiries. And so you can look at that negative information, credit card debt, all the ratios associated with credit card debt, the age of your credit reports, the diversity of the information in your credit report. You can apply this characteristic, variable, and weight scenario to every single one of those particular attributes on a credit report. So I know you're gonna have to watch this a couple times, and so I'll let you go, but that's how credit scoring systems work, and that's the definition of a bucket. Thanks a lot for watching. I truly appreciate it. Have a fantastic day.
For more videos and credit tips from John Ulzheimer, go to www.tradelinesupply.com.